Seriously, what is going on? Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I would love it if you would click on that subscribe button and help me to grow this channel. And if you're returning, welcome back. I truly do appreciate your continued support of my channel, and I would love it if you would make sure that you are subscribed as well. So I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware by now that recently the Daily Wire and Candace Owens decided to part ways. And if this is something that you are not aware of, you probably don't care and feel that there are more important things to talk about. And that has essentially been my position for the most part since this all came out. But the speculation is really not going to stop anytime soon, and so I just thought I would throw my comments in there as well, because why not? So at this point, there are so many videos labeled, "This is why Candace Owens was fired from the Daily Wire," and to be clear, I think that's probably the most annoying part about it, because nobody knows except Candace, Ben, Jeremy Boering, and probably a small handful of other people that are in that need to know group. And all of these videos that I have clicked on have all been kind of saying the exact same thing, but none of them have any idea what happened. Honestly, I don't even think Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh or Andrew Clavin or anybody else on that platform would be able to give a 100% answer at this point. So if they don't know, or at least they aren't telling us if they do, then how on earth would anybody else have a good answer? So no matter how many times people try to create videos saying, "This is why they fired Candace Owens," nobody knows. Not one. Not Brandon Tatum, not Benny Johnson, not Dave Rubin, none of that. In fact, maybe I'll label this video, "I don't know why Candace Owens got fired from the Daily Wire," just for fun. But as I have watched so many different takes on this, I have had a few thoughts come to mind that I don't feel like anybody else has touched on. And I mean, not that my opinion, you know, the opinion of little old me with my little YouTube channel and my little social media following is going to matter to any of these people, but there are things that I've thought of that I haven't heard anybody else say or even try to explore. So I am interested in what you guys think. And you can tell me if you think I'm way off base. That's totally fine, because these are just my thoughts and opinions. So the first thing I'm going to say is, I don't think that Candace Owens was fired. I really don't. I think this was a mutual agreement to part ways, because clearly there are very strong opinions that she has that not everyone at the Daily Wire is going to be really excited about. And a lot of people seem to be accusing the Daily Wire of being hypocritical about free speech when it seems as though they just fired somebody for disagreeing with them. But I don't think it's as simple as leaving the Daily Wire over differing opinions. And secondly, that's not exactly how free speech works. I have a job. You probably have a job. And every company makes decisions about who they are going to employ, at least in part based on if that person, while they're on the clock, will represent their business well. And that's not to say that they don't want people to be who they are, but they get to consider these things when they decide who they want on their staff. And when it comes to conflicting views that might exist between Candace and others at the Daily Wire, I do think that there was a lot of tension built up over the Israel-Palestine conflict, and she probably didn't feel like she could be really honest about her position on things without it causing problems. And that's not anti-free speech, but I imagine it's very stressful to just want to say what you truly think is right and be true to who you are. But because you represent someone else's platform, you might feel restricted in being able to do so. And I think that's particularly evident in one of her last tweets, or maybe it was something she said on her last episode where she just said, "I'm free." And I also think that it has become really clear that the tension between Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro was not going to ease up anytime soon, and that in the best interests of both parties, it was probably necessary to find an amicable way to separate. So I do want to touch on a few things that have led up to this point. So first, if you go back and watch Candace's last episode on the Daily Wire platform before it was announced that she would no longer be a part of that company, she went into a lot of detail about some of the past controversies that she has been in the middle of, particularly when it comes to her relationship with Kanye West, as well as issues with other news organizations who have tried to misrepresent her position on things and paint her as someone who is deeply anti-Semitic. She went into further detail about some of the things she knew behind the scenes that she was not able to disclose publicly at the time when a lot of these accusations were flying around, which I think caused some of her public comments to be taken out of context because we didn't have any idea that any of this other stuff was going on privately. And I'm not going to go into detail about all of that. She has laid it out beautifully on her episode. And so I do recommend going and watching that, and you can come to your own conclusions about what she said and what she was talking about. But I do have to say, I do not for 1 second believe that Candace Owens is anti-Semitic or that she wishes harm on Jewish people or the state of Israel. Like, none of that. And I do not believe that the people at Daily Wire believe that she is anti-Semitic. They may not feel that she is pro-Israel enough, but I don't think they believe that she actually has any hate for Jewish people. And whether, after you go back and listen to some of the things that she explained, whether you believe her account of things or not, it's still always important to consider that there is more to the story than we're being told. And I think that applies to most of the information that we see online. I think it's rare, to be honest, that we're ever getting the full truth. So people's takes on things can be entirely inaccurate because there are always going to be bits and pieces of a situation that we aren't able to consider because we don't have them. So on the Daily Wire platform, as we all know, there is Ben Shapiro, who is rightly, as an Orthodox Jew, staunchly pro-Israel. His was the first take that myself and I think most of us in conservatism watched right after the October 7th attacks, and the emotion, the anger, the outrage coming from Ben honestly could be felt through the screen, and we were all in disbelief and utter shock by what had just played out. And I think we've all also understood the passion behind his coverage of this subject since then. And then, of course, there was Candace, who was also shocked and horrified and angry at what happened to these innocent Israelis on October 7th. And also, in the weeks following these attacks, she did mention the innocent people in Palestine that she felt compassion for that were dying due to this conflict. And as we all know, at least we should know by now, the main reason that innocent Palestinians were dying, as even proudly touted by Hamas themselves, is that Hamas uses their own people as human shields and intentionally puts the weapons that they know the Israeli military will want to target. They put these things in hospitals and in schools and in largely populated areas of their own people so that as many casualties will be created as possible so that they can incite more anger toward Israel, even though they themselves are to blame for the deaths of their own citizens. And without getting too far into the discussion about that whole situation, yes, I do understand that the violent, brutal, inhumane, soulless attacks against innocent Jewish Israelis on October 7th and what most of the hostages in Gaza that are still there are probably going through right now. I understand that that is completely different than Palestinian people dying because Hamas puts their own people in the way of their weapons. And I get that that's not the same. But again, we can still acknowledge that the innocent loss of life because of the evil that is happening is something to feel sad about. And it would be nice to be able to acknowledge that, yes, there are innocent people caught in the middle of this terror in Gaza who do not deserve to die any more than innocent Jewish people do without being called anti-Semitic, which seems to be the takeaway from a lot of Candace's comments. So there were already all these tensions rising based on what their individual takes on the issue were, which was also obviously just piled on top of all the other past controversies like the one with Kanye West. So what came to a head in November was this conversation that, again, I know most, if not all of you, are probably already familiar with, but I'll just read through it quickly as a refresher, or for anyone who, by some long shot, didn't see it. So first, this was on November 14th, so this was, just a couple of months ago. Candace tweeted out, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So then Ben's response to that was, Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means quit. And then Candace responded, saying, you have been acting unprofessional and emotionally unhinged for weeks now, and we have all had to sit back and allow it and have all tried to exercise exceeding understanding for your raw emotion. But you cross a certain line when you come for scripture and read yourself into it. I will not tolerate it. And then, as you can see closer to the bottom of the screen, this is when Candace tweeted the now trending Christ is King. So when I first saw this conversation, I didn't think much of it, but a couple of things did stand out to me. First, I didn't think it was weird that Candace shared a Bible verse online, because I think I've seen all of the Daily Wire hosts share Bible verses online, and I think a lot of people do it pretty regularly, so that part wasn't odd. But due to the way that Ben Shapiro responded to it, it made me think that perhaps it was slightly directed toward him. Because I thought it was a really strange response for him to say that, Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow becomes between you and God, then by all means quit. I thought that was just a really weird thing to say, which really made me think that this was really more about some conversations that were already being had behind the scenes. You know, with having to see how emotional and angry that Ben, of course, rightly was about what was happening in Israel, and perhaps feeling like she couldn't really say what she wanted to say or have her own take on this particular issue, or even mention the people of Palestine at all without offending him or without inciting some kind of tension in the office. And I kind of think that she was probably already making it known that she was feeling restricted in being able to express herself in the way that felt right to her. And when she said that she won't tolerate Ben reading himself into scripture, I honestly think we might all be missing something there, because I didn't take it to mean that Ben was reading himself into it, but I do think, again, that this was just some kind of outward explosion of tension that was already there, that was already brewing, and perhaps in response to some of the things that had already been talked about behind the scenes, because there's no way that something like this just comes up from one exchange on Twitter. So it's like Ben took her scripture to mean that Candace was making some kind of, underhanded comment about how she felt like she had to choose between God and, refraining her opinions in order to stay working for the Daily Wire, which, like I said, was probably something that was already being discussed. And then when Candace, criticized him for seeming like he was reading himself into the scripture, she may have been lashing out against the idea that it seemed like no one at the Daily Wire can have an opinion about Israel that differs from Ben's, and perhaps she was just trying to humble him a little bit. And then, of course, she responded with the now infamous Christ is King comment. And a lot of people have taken this as some kind of anti-Semitic comment because it was said toward Ben. It wasn't just a random statement that she put out there, but it was directed in a conversation toward him, the most widely known Orthodox Jew in at least America, if not the world. But I think it's ridiculous to say that that was anti-Semitic, even if it was directed at Ben, and even if it may have been a slight jab in his direction. But the jab I think she was taking was not meant to be anti-Semitic, but maybe to let Ben know your opinion is not the be-all and the end-all. We don't all have to agree with you. You don't get to walk around telling everybody what they can and cannot say. And so when she says Christ is King, I think she literally means like, this is the person that I answer to. At the end of the day, when I go home at night and put my head on my pillow, I need to know that the things that I have said and truly align with the things that I feel Christ wants me to do. And if I have to constantly tiptoe around you, then I might be refrained from saying the things that I think Christ wants me to say. And I think some of her final statements on her last episode kind of solidify that.
I am team God. Okay? I'm team God. I do not fear the media. I do not fear journalists. I do not fear AIPAC. I don't fear big pharma. What I actually fear is God. I think that one day we are all going to have to account for the things that we have done and the things that we have said. And I want to make sure and I am not a person that is parroting lies. The fear of losing your job, encouraging some people to spit out lies, I don't think that works in the end, right? I think you've got to check your priorities.
So honestly, again, I don't think Candace Owens was fired. I think that she's someone who needs her own space, and I don't think that this was a good fit for her. Candace and Ben are two absolute powerhouses in this space, and they both have valuable information to share. I also think that it would be very difficult to keep two powerhouses under one roof. And Candace wants to be able to say whatever she needs to say without the pressure or the backlash that she might feel, even in the workplace, that come from talking about sensitive issues, particularly if the things that she wants to say might ruffle the feathers of other people around her. And I think that it just got to the point where they all just said, Candace, do you want to be here anymore? Is this a good fit? And I think they opened up the opportunity for her to break her contract with them. I don't think that anybody wanted this to be a messy breakup. And I think there is hope on both sides that they will eventually mend their differences. I also think that part of this separation would be both sides agreeing not to drag the other through the mud, which is why I think everyone involved is not saying anything at all. So I know that there are just a lot of people who don't care about that stuff, and we really don't need any more drama right now. We have so many other things to focus on, but I also think the constant speculation is going to just make things worse. It's going to unnecessarily divide conservatives, just like some of the crap that we've seen by people who worship Trump, telling people who were during the debates, telling people who were even considering another candidate that they are no longer in the club and that they're traitors. Ultimately, like Candace, and I'm sure like Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles and many others like Liz Wheeler and Glenn Beck and Brandon Tatum, I am Team God as well. We should not be holding anyone's views above his or declaring any kind of almost godlike allegiance to any of these people. But you can see that level of allegiance in people when their reaction to anybody who like questions Ben or questions Candace or questions Trump is suddenly to boycott that person or to cancel them or discredit that person entirely based on something that they did that perhaps the rest of the club didn't agree with. Unfortunately, on the right, I am seeing more people's reactions become irrational, and it's alarming how many people are getting caught up in this stuff and they lose sight of the bigger picture. I myself am going to continue to support the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens, and I hope that they figure things out, and I hope that they both continue to do well. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Please be sure to hit that like button. That really does help the channel. It does more than you know. Leave comments, leave emojis in the comment section below. If you ever have anything you want me to talk about, feel free to email me. That is in the description box. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel and help me to grow this channel. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.